Hey folks, and welcome back to Radical Slice. My name is Eric. This is part 7, and it will be the final part of my attempt to implement some of the mechanics of a classic Zelda dungeon using Pico-8. If you haven't seen the other parts, I'll link the playlist in the description so you can check those out at your leisure. And yes, that is right. This is going to be the last one in this series, at least for now. Since in this episode, we'll finish up our remaining requirements. Like I said at the outset, we're not going to spend a lot of time making this thing look or sound good, or really any time at all doing that. So don't expect any sort of aesthetic revelations in this episode, but we will be implementing the shutter mechanic, where the player is forced to kill all the baddies before the room's doors will open. And as the final touch, we'll place an item in the last room for the player to get, so that will serve as like the victory condition and bring an end to our little demo here. So I will check out here and let past Eric guide you through the final changes, and I will speak to you again at the end of this video. I think we can handle the shutters by just having doors having like a particular state. Right? And if the door has that state, it'll be drawn with a different sprite, and that sprite will be something that the player cannot pass through, and the baddies too. But the baddies are already screwed with doors anyway, so. Well, kind of. I have noticed occasionally baddies somehow find a way to sneak through at the corners, but I'm just not going to worry about that right now. We'll just let them be adventurous, because when I move to the next room, they get unloaded anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Cool. So let me go to our doors. Doors will now have state. So in our new door function, we'll have state equals open, and the other state for door would be, shut. The way is shut. So then in the draw method, if door.state equals open, do this. Otherwise, do some other thing. So I think now we can get rid of these sort of colored sprites for the doors, and we'll just have like one tile that's a slightly different shade to differentiate it from regular floor tiles. Okay, just to test the drawing here, I've set up our doors to have some sort of state, and the way that they're drawn is slightly different depending on the state. I'll keep this one open. And in room 2, I provided one shut door. So let's just make sure that that all looks good. Cool, yeah, so that's stuck. So it'll still trigger, but we're going to add some collision so that the player is not allowed to actually walk through that door. So I think the best way to handle the player collision is actually so we have these wall sprites that have our first flag set, and that prevents the player and the baddies from kind of walking through them. So we can actually set the same flag here, and that would prevent the player from walking through them. They'd be treated as walls, basically. Let me see if that will work. No, it does not work. Okay, that's fine. Let me add an extra check to the collision, the player and door collision. So if the door state is shut, it won't trigger. That's probably the best way to handle it. So in order to make the collision a little bit easier, I'm going to modify our door draw function. And so what I'm aiming to do is, so we already have collision with the player and the walls based on this red flag here. This is a red flag. So ideally we'd want to kind of reuse that, right? And treat a closed door the same way we treat a wall and just display it differently. So we can set the flag here, but currently in our draw door function, we're drawing closed doors as a sprite. We don't want to do that. We want to use the map or the mset function to draw it on the map instead. So I am going to go ahead and just make that change. And I think if what we can do is sort of, if the door's state changes from shut to open, then we can change the map tile as well so that it becomes a floor tile, a regular floor tile, and the player can just walk on it normally. Okay, so I updated the draw function to use mset to set a tile on the map rather than using sprites, and that gives us the collision for free. The bummer is like the door coordinates are x and y coordinates, and the map needs tile indices, so I'm just dividing those by 8 here to get the right entry into the map. Fixed a little player and wall collision bug by changing some of the logic around the sort of map tile check. Kind of like it was allowing the player to walk partially through walls, and I didn't want to have that. So the floor, I'm sorry, not the floor. The door stuff seems to be working good now. So what we need to do now is have some sort of event that will allow the doors to open. And we want to tie that to like extinguishing all the baddies in the room. Currently that doesn't work. And when that happens, we will redraw the map tiles to be just floor tiles, and then we'll overlay the door sprite on top of that as part of the normal draw function. But right now, because we kind of cheated and used the map for wall-based collision, even when the door opens, the player won't be able to walk through because the map is still going to be technically a wall. So what I'm going to do is write the sort of handler function in the door manager to handle that sort of event and rewrite the map tiles and change all of the doors to be open. Okay, I think this logic should work. Basically, we'll loop through all the doors in the current room. We'll set them all to open, and we'll redraw the map tile to be just the regular floor tile, which I think was 10. 10. Oh yeah, 10 is sort of like the door floor tile, right? So that makes sense. Now we just need something to trigger this event. And what is this going to be? Well, we decided that when we extinguish all enemies, that will sort of allow the doors to open. Well, who tracks the enemies or the baddies? Well, the baddie manager tracks the baddies. So what we can do here is we have this handle attacked function. And this function gets called whenever a baddie is attacked. Now, we don't want to open the doors when the first baddie is attacked. We want to open the doors when all the baddies are gone. So what we can do is check the length of our baddie manager's baddies table. And if the length is 0, we know that all the baddies are gone. And we can fire off that open door event. Or in this case, I think we called it the room clear event. So let's have the event first. So we need a topic, and it needs to be called room clear. I think we call it room clear. Handle room clear. Yeah, room clear. And then we'll add a subscription for that. And that's going to be the door manager handles that. Handle room clear, like that. And then in here, we'll check the length of the baddie thing, which we can do by this. Pico-8 has this sort of hash mark operator that'll check the length of a table. So if the length of the table is 0, then add some event. U.add event. Okay, let's see how that works. We'll load main, run. Okay, door is closed. Player cannot pass their door. Kills one baddie. Kills another baddie. Door opens. Room transitions. Okay, cool. So that worked. And the problem is that there are no baddies in this room, and we defaulted a door to being shut. So that's not cool. So let's reshuffle sort of our room definitions to have baddies in here. Okay, door is shut. Can't go through. We've got one baddie. Good. Door opens. Pass through. Both doors are closed. Ice that guy. Pass through. Both doors are open. Everything is awesome. We can go back. We can go back. Everything is awesome. All right, let's add one more baddie to that second room. So run that again. Good. Good, good, good. Oops. We got one. All right, and we're good. So the only thing we need now is an item. So I think what we're going to do is place that onto the map somewhere and add some collision for it. So a while back we added this item thing inside our room table. So I don't know if we really need to. I guess we can add like a new item function, even though like there's only going to be one for our purposes. But we can follow this pattern of having a new baddie and new door that sort of sets the initial values of whatever the thing is. Items don't have direction and they don't really have state. We'll also make an item draw function. We'll pass the item to that. Items do, however, have a height and width. We care about this because we need to do collision with our player, because the whole point is when the player touches the item, that sort of ends the game, right? And similar to how when we initialize a room, we sort of set up our door manager and our baddie manager, we'll have to have like an item manager. We can kind of expand this or extend this to handle different kinds of items. Like you can imagine there might be like in Zelda, there's like hearts and rupees and all that other stuff. In our case, we don't have any of those, but we'll set up a manager anyway to sort of future-proof ourselves a little bit and keep consistent with the pattern that we have. I'm going to steal the sort of door manager pattern for this. Okay, and then in our load room function, we'll also point our door manager to the room's items. So previously, in our sort of room table, we had this key called item, and we were setting it to nil to sort of represent that it was empty. But in order to follow the same pattern that we've been doing with baddies and doors, we will change it to items, plural, and we'll make it an empty table to represent the empty state. So I've updated all three rooms. And in the third room, I'm putting our new item at 124, 124, which my sort of cocktail napkin calculation tells me should be roughly where we want it in room 3. And in our main function, in load room, similar to how we're doing the baddie manager and the door manager, I've also set up this item manager, and we're pointing the items to the current room's items, or the new room's items on room transition. And then finally in draw, just as we're calling door m draw, baddie m draw, we also have item m draw, and all that does here is loops through all of the items and draws them to the screen. So hopefully this will work. Sort of made my life a lot more difficult by making it a requirement to kill the baddies. Okay, cool. So the item is being drawn to the screen. As you can see, there's no collision with this yet. So we want to do a couple of things here. We want to add the collision, obviously, but also that collision will trigger an event. And the thing that's going to subscribe to that topic where we'll put the event is the game manager, because that's the thing that sort of changes the game's display and update loops. So just how we have that function when we move from room to room that stops the input from updating. Let me open the code actually. Just like we have these event handlers to change our update function to the game update and next room update, right, so that we can sort of block player input when we're moving from room to room. We'll have another one that just sort of changes the game's update loop to be essentially nothing, and then places some message on the screen like, good job, buddy, right? So just like we did with the update function, we'll need to create a draw function kind of pointer that will allow us to draw different things depending on the game's state. So let me set that up now. Similar to the update function, we created this underscore draw function, which is just a pointer to whatever the current draw is. And I'm going to point it to a function called game draw, which I have not created yet. We're going to copy the contents of our current draw function and call it game draw. And then in the actual draw function, we'll just call our function pointer. And let me just reload and make sure everything works okay. Everything worked okay. We would definitely see that break right away if something was wrong. I hope anyway. Cool. So now let's go ahead and make that new topic for when the player gets the item. And I've opted to call this topic get end item because again, like even though this is just a slice, we only have one item, so we could just call it get item. This item is kind of special in the sense that it's going to sort of terminate the dungeon and show the victory screen or whatever. So again, just a touch of a hint of future proofing or sort of like future implementation logic. And when that item, I'm sorry, when an event appears in that topic, our game manager handle get end item function will be called. We have not defined that function yet though, so let's do that now. Okay, so what we're going to do in our event handler here is take our two function pointers, update and draw, and we'll change those to point to end update and end draw, right? Neither of which exist right now. So end update will probably just be an empty function because all we want to do is just display a message to the screen and that's it. We won't even provide any reset functionality right now, just display the message. And then draw will be the thing that actually draws the message. All right, so like I said, end update is going to be nothing. So the game is just going to kind of soft lock itself and display this end draw, or it's going to run this end draw function for the display. It'll just print good job, buddy, at these coordinates in hopefully green text. So cool. Our logic, I think, is set up. We just need to check the collision and then add an event to our topic. All right, so that's in there. I think this will work. Let's give it a test. Cool. Yeah, that mostly worked, except we didn't clear the screen before we printed good job, buddy. So we'll just add that real quick. Beautiful. Okay, so back to our sheet. And rooms can have items is in there. And ending get items in there. So that covers everything in our list of requirements. So I would say we are done here. Hey all, thanks again for watching. Sincerely, thank you. Especially if you sat through this entire playlist. That is a huge amount of time to invest in these videos, and I really hope that you were able to get something out of it. If you're doing any development stuff yourself, maybe this gave you some ideas, or maybe you just were entertained by my awful attempts to implement something like this. As for the next things that I hope to post on this channel, I've got a couple of ideas in mind for future implementations, kind of in a similar vein to this one. So just doing like small re-implementations of some classic game mechanics. And hey, on that note, if you have anything you'd like to see done, feel free to leave a comment. I can't promise I'll get to those because these things all take a really long time, but you never know. Maybe one day. In the meantime, you might see me post some devlogs from some other projects that I've been working on. So if that's the kind of thing that you might be into, like just development, game development, Pico-8, that sort of stuff, maybe consider subscribing and you'll be slightly more likely to catch these in your feed. Again, I just want to thank you for giving this channel some of your time, and I do hope that you found it worth your while. So I have been Eric, your developer. Bye for now.